Hey everyone, Stacks here. Welcome to the channel. And guys, today I'm checking out House of X number 5 by Jonathan Hickman and Marte Garcia. And guys, I gotta be honest, I think this issue is gonna tick some folks off. You're gonna have a bunch of people dropping the I told you so's and see I told you nothing matters, and we will see what happens in the reactions. But overall, it's a very, very interesting book. And the book begins on Krakoa, where Lorna Dane Polaris is sitting and talking to Magneto and asking him, humans, is there any good in them? And Magneto basically explains that the one good thing about humans is that at some point they stopped being hunters and gatherers and they planted their feet and they said, we're not moving. And that's really the one good thing that humans taught us as mutants, and that is society. And Magneto pontificates a little further, saying that, you know, him and Charles always wondered what would happen if mutants, they stopped being hunted and instead they planted their feet. And he further develops this thought, saying that it's not their greatest trait wasn't their strength and aggressiveness, but instead it was their intelligence, ingenuity, and creativity. And now he's getting to see the fruits of all that labor. And as he finishes this thought, 5 very, very important mutants arrive. And the significance of these characters in past issues range all over the board. First off, you have Gold Balls. That sounds like a 007 antagonist. His power basically generating golden balls. You had Proteus, which is Kevin McTaggart, which does raise a question regarding Moira's current presence in this timeline. Joshua Foley, which is Elixir. You have Eva Bell, which is Tempest, and of course Hope Summers. Now these 5 mutants are going to play an incredible role going forward with all of mutantdom and this Krakoa experiment and this new society that the mutants are building. Now I'm going to try to break this down step by step. First of all, Fabio Medina, Gold Balls. He seemingly had this pointless power that he could just make these golden balls. That was until they eventually found out they were actually eggs. Enter Kevin McTaggart, Proteus. His ability is that he can warp reality and he can make those eggs become viable eggs. From there, you add the DNA of, you inject the DNA of the mutant you wish to preserve, and then the mutant Elixir, Joshua Foley, steps in and basically kickstarts the process of cellular replication, basically beginning life within that egg. From that point, all you need is time for that egg to develop, which then enter Eva Bell, which is Tempest. And what she's able to do is age these husks. That's what they're calling these bodies inside the eggs, is husks. She's able to age them to the appropriate point. So of the 5, who haven't I mentioned, and that's Hope Summers. Her whole job in this is basically, she's like synergy. I mean, she's the one that makes them connect in a way that they're able to complete this process, and she magnifies their ability, their power to work together. She makes it so each one of these mutants on the team can operate at their peak level of performance, and to do so in unison. And Magneto and Polaris are standing by watching this, and of course the first ones that they're bringing back, the first ones that they're replicating, are those 8 mutants that we saw die back in Powers of X number 4. Now enter a very crucial point to all of this, and that is, these are basically husks. They are empty shells of these mutants. And that's where Jonathan Hickman makes a major change to the system known as Cerebro. And what he reveals here is that Cerebro wasn't just used to go out and check and try to find where mutants were located or what was going on with them, or magnify Professor Xavier's power set. Instead, what it was doing this whole time is recording the thoughts, memories, and feelings of the mutants that it came into contact with. So as this husk of Cyclops comes up, Xavier grabs him and basically puts those thoughts, memories, feelings back into this husk, essentially revitalizing, resurrecting Cyclops. And he does that for all 8 of the mutants that were lost. I will point out the fact that apparently he resurrected them without shame, because they just all want to stand around naked for almost the entire issue. And while this process is pretty amazing on this small group of mutants, these 8 that went and sacrificed themselves to destroy the Mother Mold, they're using this process on a much, much grander scale, which I'll discuss at the end when I get into the white pages. Back to the moment of the point of the resurrection of Cyclops here. Xavier's down on a knee saying, "There you are, my boy. Even knowing I could bring you back, a part of me dies when any of you do. So let's not do that again, shall we?" And Cyclops is immediately back to the mission. Did it work? And Xavier tells him it did. You succeeded, and your sacrifice was not in vain. It was a gift, and a gift in which you giving, you saved us all. And with all this going on and all these guys being resurrected from death, you have Storm, who basically tells them to get on their feet, and the world is not ready for the likes of your return, but Krakoa is waiting. And they step out onto this balcony of this giant tree, and she introduces all of them in a way to where the characteristics and the traits verify to some degree that it is in fact them inside those husks, inside the shells. They are indeed resurrected. And I will say that these images and the chanting of mutant, I think it's very much intended to be abrasive and almost, are the X-Men, are the mutants and mutandom going too far? Are they making a mistake here? And this whole concept very much carries over to the next scene, and that is that Magneto and Professor X are talking that there's actually a Security Council meeting at the UN tomorrow where they're going to have a vote, and from there they're going to go to the General Assembly and have another vote on the nation state of Krakoa. And it's at the UN where you find Emma Frost doing her work. And the scene immediately begins with basically congratulations from individuals like Hank McCoy saying, "Congratulations, Charles, you've won yourself a nation." But you also find out that Emma Frost influenced people throughout the voting process, including the Russian government that she convinced to abstain. And the problem isn't so much that she convinced her, but she convinced her to abstain telepathically. She used her telepathic influence to do that. And Professor X actually addresses her with her and saying that, you know, that leaves a effect on the person who perpetrates it and the one who has this done to them. And it doesn't come without cost when you do this to somebody. But instead of reprimanding her or scolding her in any way, he just simply says, you know, "Hey, thanks for your sacrifice." And this shifts the paradigm quite a bit, because it goes from them offering these the drugs for mental healing and extending life. It goes from them offering this as we'll give you these if you allow us to have this nation state, to they've now officially forced the hand of individuals to allow them to have their nation state. And I suspect that's going to have implications going forward, just like Professor X hinted at. Breaking from there and going to the third scene, you have Wolverine standing back on Krakoa, and you have Sage opening the door to Krakoa to allow individuals to come through the transporters. Which I have to ask is, how are they getting the adamantium back into Wolverine every time he resurrects? Just a random thought. Anyways, back to Krakoa. Krakoa is receiving people, or mutants, through these portals, and what comes through is like a who's who of mutant villains. You have Mr. Sinister step through, you have Exodus step through, and then finally Apocalypse steps through. And as Apocalypse is coming through, he looks up, and as he's speaking to the island, he says, yes, I know, it's been too long. And Wolverine kind of cuts him off and says, "You're getting a little too comfortable, aren't you, pal?" And Apocalypse responds that comfortable is inadequate of a word. I'm familiar. I know Krakoa, and Krakoa knows me. He then tells Wolverine that he actually fought a war here before the world had any idea there were such thing as mutants. And that's where Magneto cuts in, because he tells him, "Look, this is fitting because we've fought for something as well and we've gained it. I want to be clear here, Apocalypse. We will not risk losing this place because of some of you who might not value what is being offered." And Apocalypse tells him it's not going to be a problem. That for centuries he's fostered war and conflict so that mutants could establish their dominance over the world. And that's exactly what they're doing. The X-Men, Magneto, Professor Xavier, all of them have finally become what he intended them to be. And he says he couldn't be more proud. And Magneto stops him again and says, "If that's the case, I want to hear the words." And Apocalypse bows his head and says, "We submit to the laws of the land, be what they may, and acknowledge that from this day forward we all serve a higher purpose than want or need. One people from this day forward." And with that, Professor Xavier says, Then let it be known to all the world. Spread the news. Krakoa is for all mutants. And he extends a hand, and Apocalypse extends his, and they shake. And Professor Xavier says, "Welcome home." And the final quote for the issue from Magneto is, "If you are us, then be with us. Come home." Alright, now so jumping to the white papers. The first one is titled Resurrection, and it goes over the process and the systems for how resurrection of these mutants is occurring. Of course, reaching back, we know that Sinister is the one providing the DNA samples for all of these individuals. Now, a couple notes here is that the genetic base that Mr. Sinister designed, which was originally organic, has been converted into basically a digital format to where they look at the possibility of being able to create designer modifications in the future, which will probably lead us to the Chimera program. So going back into the process of how this process worked with the 5 mutants, you have Fabio Medina, Golden Ball, or Gold Balls. I don't know why I keep calling him Golden Balls, but Gold Balls. He is a mutant. He's the one that's producing the unviable biological egg. Kevin McTaggart, Proteus, is the one that then takes it, warps reality to make it a viable egg, and Elixir is the one who kicks on basically life within that, the cell replication within the husk that makes it grow. From there, Tempest ages it, and Hope Summers, once again, she's the one who just is the synergetic, is that a word? She synergizes the whole process and ensures that the 4 are able to work together at their peak power levels in order to ensure that resurrection can happen. Now, after all this happens, the mind, that is where Cerebro comes in and Professor X inserting that latest version of their mind into the individuals. Now, one of the interesting things is he's actually backing up people's minds like a hard drive, like on a weekly basis. Something else that I thought was interesting is that Proteus has an issue where he burns out a physical body. So they constantly have Proteus in a chamber resurrecting. So he constantly has a new body ready to go, and it's actually a copy of Charles Xavier that they're using for that process for some reason. Now that we've talked about the process, the next thing they talk about is the scale of this process. And it's on a massive scale. They are looking at actually regenerating all the mutants that have been killed over time. I mean, you go back to the mutant massacre of Genosha, and that's over 16 million mutants that they're looking at replicating. And while originally this was going to take about 300 years to do, just based off the limitations, as this group of mutants that's been working together has gotten basically better at it, they've, for whatever reason, they're getting more efficient at it. It's reduced it down to 10 years. It turns out that one of the limiting factors at this point is actually Charles Xavier and his use of Cerebro. But they're actually planning to train a group of telepaths in order to properly use Cerebro to avoid that bottleneck. Another interesting point is the resurrection protocol. So basically, these individuals who died fell within that protocol. Well, it was confirmed that they had been killed. And the protocol states basically you have to be confirmed dead in order to have a clone or to have this resurrection protocol enacted, or you have to have been without contact with Cerebro for greater than 30 days. It's also hinted that there will be a force, probably X-Force, I'm guessing, I don't know, I haven't read the future solicitations, their job will be to go out and to verify individuals that they've been killed in order to execute the protocols. Anyways, guys, like I said earlier, this issue I'm sure is going to tick some people off because it's going to feel like everything that happened back in Powers of X with the sacrifice of Nightcrawler and Wolverine and all those moments that were so insanely emotional, it seems like they didn't matter, especially the moment where Nightcrawler and Wolverine are talking about, what happens in this next life. It's very, I don't know, disheartening that this resurrection process would happen so quickly following their death. Granted, I think everybody knew they were coming back, but it really does make this event, what they were doing, it really does kind of diminish what happened at the Mother Mold. Don't get me wrong, it was still an awesome issue, and I absolutely loved it. But just it's kind of a bummer. I do feel like in a few panels, Pepe Larraz's art takes a step back from earlier issues, but I still think the colorist, Marte Garcia, is absolutely killing it. I'm still very interested to see what happens going forward. The next issue, once you do the cipher, is For the Children, is the name of it. And then the one after that is going to be called I Am Not Ashamed of What I Am. Now, I have been absolutely loving this series, and I'm just really hoping that Jonathan Hickman can stick the landing here at the end. This book, this series, definitely still has my highest recommendation. Right now, I mean, I'm really enjoying Absolute Carnage, but if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely go with House of X, Powers of 10 over Absolute Carnage right now. And they're both really great books. All that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you haven't, please hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, leave the like, and of course share this. And I want to hear your comments down below. Where are we heading with this? Did this bum you out that all the sacrifices that happened earlier are now kind of null and void, or is it par for the course? Are we just doing a comic books kind of moment? Tell me what you think, guys. That's all I got. Real Comic Stacks out.